Hi and welcome to this tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to make a realistic eye by using this unique charcoal method. But first I want to show you the tools that I'll be using. You want to make sure to use a paper that's smooth enough to create all the small details. So I chose the Strathmore Tone Tan paper for this drawing. This is a charcoal sachet made by Edge Pro Gear. I really recommend it and I will tell you why later in this video. Then we have the blending stumps. I use 3 different sizes because they each create different shapes. I like to use them because they make my art piece look more alive and just more interesting. Normally, people only use them for blending, but you can actually also use them for applying more charcoal to the paper, and I will show you how very soon. I also use these charcoal pencils from Generals in medium, soft, and extra soft. Keep in mind that the softer a pencil is, the harder it is to erase, so only use the soft ones when you're completely sure about where the parts belong. It is also important to keep your pencils sharp before you start, and the best way to do that is actually with a knife, and then just use the sandpaper. And be careful when you do the sandpaper part, because they break so easily. And for the eye to look even more smooth, I use this cosmetics brush from Primark or something, and this sponge thing from H&M. And they can actually do really cool stuff. And for the darkest parts of my drawing, I will use this brush pen. I very often use it for the eyelashes and also for the pupil. And finally we have the Kneaded eraser, my favorite tool. So these are all my tools, and I'm not saying that you really need these, but I've found them really helpful when making realistic art. So I start out by making a few simple soft lines. And at this point I'm not at all worried about how it looks. It's basically just to give myself a sense of where I want to place the eye. Besides, when you're working with charcoal, everything is kind of floating around, so the lines you started out with will probably disappear anyway. Next step is to use the blending stump to pick up some charcoal powder and apply it onto the lines we just created with a graphite pencil. For beginners, this is important to do before you start to use the sachet, or else the lines you just created will drown in the charcoal powder from the sachet. Now you can pick up your sachet and start to tap it against the paper like this. And if you don't have this tool, don't worry. A lot of people get way too caught up in the materials they use, and you don't necessarily need them to create good realistic art. Now they can make things easier sometimes, but the important thing is to improve your own skills, so you can basically do that with just one simple pencil and a blending stump maybe. The reason why I love the sachet is because it kills the white in the paper in a really nice way, and it's easy to erase. So as you can see, I'm just applying a new layer of charcoal by using the small blending stump. Then you can start to fill in the iris with a soft layer of charcoal. Even though we're going to use the white charcoal for the highlights, try to stay away from these spots when you do this. Now that you know where you want the iris to be, you can start to use the tools that are harder to remove. I begin to fill in the pupil with my medium charcoal pencil. The circle around the iris is also pretty dark, so I'm gonna go in and shade a bit with the charcoal pencil here as well. And as I want this to look as realistic as possible, I use the brush to smooth out the lines that I just created. The repeating pattern in the following stage is that I'll apply more charcoal and texture and then blend it out with either the blending stumps or my brush. Before I dive into all the detail work of the iris, I want to focus on the eyelid for a second. I'll gradually apply more charcoal, layer upon layer, by using my brush and zone charcoal powder. And now comes the best part, in my opinion. Start to fill in the spots you left untouched with a white charcoal pencil to create the highlights. I will also use the white charcoal pencil to create some more detail in the iris. This really depends on where your highlights are situated and also what they look like. But in my reference photo, I noticed some dark spots in the highlight area, so I will just try to recreate that. If you want any area in your drawing to look slightly darker, the easiest and fastest way is to use the Sachet. Right now I want to focus on the eyelashes and upper and lower eyelid, just slowly making it all look a little similar to my reference photo. So now I'm using my blending stump to shade a bit around the caruncle area. This really depends on where your highlights are situated and also what they look like. But in my reference photo, I noticed some dark spots in the highlight area, so I will just try to recreate that. The Kneaded eraser is a great tool to use when you want to create small details, like small dots and lines. Just trying to recreate some of the skin around the eye with my Kneaded eraser and the blending stump. So for this final part of the process, I will focus on creating more details, more little highlights, and more texture to the whole eye, and focus mainly on the iris, the eyelashes, and upper and lower eyelid. Way to draw a realistic eye with charcoal on colored paper. So thank you for watching. I really hope this video inspired you to create and that you give your work its own expression. To receive more videos like this one, click the subscribe button and follow me on social media to see more of my work.